If I'm being honest, when Tracy leaves town, I fall apart a little. The problem isn't so much emotional dependence, though I am a weak man, as it is the total destruction of my carefully established and maintained routines. The daily bike commute becomes a load-bearing habit even as my tendency to eat Taco Bell and Buffalo Wild Wings in their absence strains my body and my will to get up in the morning. I tell myself I'll get things done, catch up on adult responsibilities, clean the house, work on my book, but at this point in my life, I know myself well enough to understand that in the end, at most 33% of what I planned will happen. Frankly, I'm lucky anything got done last week. Slay the Spire 2 came out on Thursday. This is the sequel to a game that my Steam account claims I have played for 399 hours. That overstates it a bit. I've left it running overnight several times, but of course, one of the reasons I did that was to introduce some ambiguity into that number, which I find tremendously embarrassing. Ultimately, there's no getting around it. This is how I am spending my life. Tracy returned from the AWP conference on Monday night. It was originally supposed to be Sunday, but travel is a nightmare now. We recorded this conversation on Tuesday. I meant to upload it yesterday, but instead of putting the finishing touches on this edit, I spent Wednesday evening with them watching wrestling and then a stream where a man is pursued through the streets of Grand Theft Auto 4 by cars whose speed value has been set to 999. Now it's Thursday night, and I've found time. As our man in the field, Tracy reports in this episode on the AWP experience, and I talk a bit about enjoying a book even as I find myself agreeing with it too much. Nodding makes reading difficult, or it would if this weren't an audiobook. This is Library Pizza, a podcast about reading. I'm Mike Meginnis, and I'll see you after my very dignified theme music, which my beloved partner Tracy Rae Bowling so kindly made for me. So, let's agree before we get going that we're going to keep it professional for the duration of this recording, because you're our correspondent and you're our man in the field.
Yeah.
And so right now that's our relationship. I'm sort of the bureau chief of the newspaper that is the Library Pizza podcast.
Yeah.
And you, meanwhile, are a correspondent who will be filing a report, which I will ruthlessly copy edit it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, we can afterwards, we can take off our reporter trilbies, put on our bridal hats, and we can resume our lives as lovers. But for right now, we are not lovers. We are professionals.
It's too bad I'm so distractingly hot in the field then.
It's going to be a real issue for me. But, you know, I've worked with hot people before. And I think
we have a manual for this.
It's the main thing the manual says is don't have this conversation.
Yeah, just don't say it. Just don't talk about it.
Yeah, just don't talk about how hot they are, or if you have a relationship as lovers, now's not the time. Mm-hmm. So you went as our correspondent, our man in the field, to the AWP conference. AWP, of course, stands for Association of Writers and Writing Program. So it should be AWWP, but they have decided not to be cool like that.
Or AWWAP. No, AWAWP.
AWAP. It should be AWAP.
I don't think that's good. And I have had to explain to a lot of people at work because I'm in a new department. I'm used to being in a space where everybody just knows what AWP is and means, and you don't have to spell it out. But I have had to say the full name of the conference several times now, and I dislike it.
I feel like it's weird that it is in a BW3's situation. Where there is, in fact, I researched this recently, and I've forgotten exactly what the term is, what the third W is. But there is, if you look up Buffalo Wild Wings.
You want to know the third W?
Yeah, do you remember the third W?
Yeah, WEC.
WEC. Yeah. So Buffalo Wild Wings and WEC was the original name of Buffalo Wild Wings, and so it was BW3s. And AWP should be A2Ws. Should be A dubs. Should be A dubs.
Yeah, I think that could catch on.
We know what the second W is, though. I guess
it is kind of just one W. I kind of agree with them there. I think they made the right decision.
Well. You're the professional. So when you are explaining AWP to your colleagues who have never heard of this glorious conference before, what are you telling them?
I usually mention that it is, it is an academic conference to an extent in the mode that they are used to. There are panels. There are people talking about educating in writing and best pedagogical practices, and there are people talking about theory. But there is also a giant book fair, and it is also kind of a giant class reunion for people who have been writers or involved in writing programs. Whoppers, we call them.
Yes, I've been calling them Whoppers for years, and I am also a Whopper.
I don't let on, but I will let on here the extent to which it is both a conference and a party. Although
I'm nodding.
I do think that reputation has somewhat diminished in recent years as the conference has gotten bigger, more professionalized, more money is pouring into it, and people are just sort of taking it a little more seriously. So it's like, yeah, it is an academic convention, it is an industry convention, and it is a party.
Yeah, I guess it did used to be more of a party. There was I think it was the second time that I went, it was in DC. You didn't go that year. Mm-hmm. And there was a party that was associated with like HTML Giant, which is a name I haven't said aloud in a long time, and some other like indie presses and stuff. And it was offsite, which is where all the coolest stuff traditionally happens. And there was a lot of people drinking, and I remember this particular reading with a kind of fondness because it marks the only time a person made a pass at me so incredibly unsubtle that even I perceived that I was being hit on and had to kind of like carefully manage them and let them down easy. The only time I've ever knowingly done that, where I was like, yep, this is definitely... this person would probably like something to happen here, and even I know that.
Uh-huh.
So that's a level of intoxication that like you don't see as much these days.
No, especially at what is ostensibly a professional conference that, as in my case, people are being paid to go to. I mean, that's not true. I subsidized to go to. So yes, likewise, my university employer paid for me to go to an AWP many years ago to have my ass fondled. And at a reading.
I forgot this.
So yeah, no, it used to be a little Wild West. And it was maybe in some ways, maybe we should actually be comparing it to the Olympics, in that it's like a bunch of people theoretically on the top of their game who get together for 3 days to be totally debauched when they're not on the court.
There are some things about that comparison that I find both flattering and extremely inaccurate. Like, because I don't know if, I assume that part of the reason that the Olympic Village is famously such a fuckfest is that everyone there is in great shape. And so like for them, it's not even a big deal. It's like, yeah, I will totally have sex with you and then go run 100 miles because the sex is not even, to me, that's not even an exertion. Whereas I feel like at AWP, wandering around with all love and acknowledging that about half the men there look like me almost exactly. You don't look at them and think these are people at the peak of their physical prowess. They could probably rattle off a couple of one-night stands, no problem.
I will say briefly, that is so much less true these days.
They don't all look like me?
So many fewer Mike clones. Not even notable, the number of Mike clones.
Wow.
Yeah. One, which is good in one way, because it is partly because the conference has gotten more diverse.
Yes.
So there are just like fewer white people walking around generally.
Which is one of the main adjectives people would generally use to describe me. White.
Yeah.
It's one of my key qualities.
If they're being honest.
No, they should.
But there are still plenty of white women, and now the white women are converging around a look that is pretty similar to me.
Yeah, I have some guesses about kind of what the spectrum would be, and it's like runs from person where you definitely feel like you're going to go ahead and ask explicitly for pronouns if they aren't provided.
Yep.
All the way to lady in a cardigan who would like to be an editor at a small imprint at a large press.
Yes. Yes, you've perfectly narrowed the the descriptors. But re-fuckfest.
As regards.
But I do think that element has diminished some now. And like with the Olympics, I think it was always more about the fact that it was a big social opportunity more than it was about here's a place where people I find attractive are in evidence. I don't think that's part of it for the Olympics. I don't think it's part of it really for AWP is like, look at all these hot people. I think it's more just like, oh man, wherever I am, whether it's in practice every day with my horrible coach or toiling away at my day job and hoping I get my second book published, I am finally around enough like-minded people my own age who share some of my interests and know what life is like for me that I could fuck a lot of them.
There is something, I don't know that I've ever heard this discussed in quite these terms, but I do think that there is something romantic / erotic / like a new adjective that we don't have yet that like combines those ideas with the idea of like absolute bottom of the barrel laziness, where like you can have
expediency.
The thing I was going to say is that like you can have the most boring, tedious version of the conversation that you're having in your head all the time, that like you're constantly suppressing your complaints about the world of publishing.
Yep.
You are not letting anyone know how much you're thinking about your submittable queue or whatever.
Yep.
And you're briefly in an environment where not only can you complain and whine about those things in extremely minute detail, but other people would like to hear it and they will respond in turn. And that is the one problem is you do have to be at least a little interested in what they say back.
Yeah, yeah.
There is a cutting loose that is possible there where you don't have to worry about boring people quite as much as I usually worry about boring people.
Do you want to hear some of the things that people tried to talk to me about?
I would love to hear about that.
I was approached by just a few people. AWP is also kind of historically known as being a pitch fest. Everybody's also kind of trying to pitch themselves to each other, and
I don't know why.
And they're networking, but it's writer networks don't really work the same way.
Nobody has anything anybody else wants.
That's
like it is so rare that you're talking to a person where like if you won them over, they could then do anything that you wanted to happen as a result.
Yeah. So like for instance, I kind of pretended that I had any sort of power or network potential just to have anything to talk about with somebody who was from Indiana and wanted to write books that were not about Indiana, but set in Indiana.
That was kind of their ambition. I would like to be writing books set in Indiana.
No. Their ambition was to be a best-selling author.
Oh, okay, sure.
What they had that I could engage with them on was, well, the book I'm currently working on selling is set in Indiana, where I'm from.
Nice.
So I pretended to know about Midwest small presses, like Indiana-based small presses, because she was like, "Yeah, my agent has tried the bigger publishers, and I'm starting to think about small presses and maybe even something regional, like, kind of local interest or something." And I'm like, yeah, Indiana's really working on building up its arts culture after, some years of less investment. So there, I think there should be some pretty good presses in the region now.
Is any of that true?
I maybe.
You will always be able to find people saying things like that. Of course, it would not be happening at the level of state government.
No.
The state government there is worse than it ever was while we lived there. It is stupider and meaner. But yeah, there's going to be somebody in the state trying to make arts culture happen.
My sense is that Indianapolis downtown specifically has undergone a period of revival, and they would like it to be known as a cultural center and not just a convention center.
Yeah, Indianapolis, when we lived there, it was like downtown felt like it should be the cool place to be, but even apart from the fact that like driving there is the worst thing that can ever happen to a person and does feel like it will kill you, there was like not much reason to go there unless you just had a job in one of the office buildings. Like you could go to some restaurants, but they weren't better than the other restaurants. There, I suppose, are cultural institutions there, or were, but I couldn't tell you about a single one of them. Like it really didn't leave much impression.
They were sports. Was the thing. And that's a little unfair. We have and did have a symphony. We have the world's best children's museum.
That's true.
We have a repertory theater that's really good, but those were not heavily invested in, to my knowledge or sort of experience. And what we had was sports. The Colts were big for several years, still are, but, they definitely thrived when we were coming of age. And so the city poured a lot of money into making it a good place to go for sports, which, like you said, was like, okay, we just have kind of a bunch of sports bars downtown. We have a bunch of places you can watch TV adjacent to the giant stadium. And that was kind of the culture. So yeah, they looked into revitalizing some arts communities that already existed, like Fountain Square is had historically been an arts community, Mass Ave, Broad Ripple, stuff like that. And just sort of making it a little more coherent. So yeah, so there was a small grain of truth there in what I said to this woman and that was enough, that I amplified in order to get the conversation to end, because it was clear to me that I needed to offer something. Yeah,
I'm haunted by this woman who approached me, and it's not like it's mainly women that do this. It's there's plenty, all the genders indulge in this behavior.
Absolutely.
But the first example that comes to mind is a woman who approached the table for the literary magazine that we worked at while we were in graduate school and tried to pitch me on a story that she had written and was considering submitting to us, which if you're not in this world, you will not necessarily know that considering submitting something is like... It's less than nothing.
Yeah.
It's less than thinking about sending an email.
Just
like,
submit it.
Yeah, submit it. I don't care. I won't care after. I don't care now. At no point will it matter.
We didn't charge for submissions.
No, we're just going to reject it. Like,
yeah,
that's the whole interaction. You submit it. I read 3 words and don't like it, and then we reject it and we're done.
But they didn't. They wanted to circumvent that process, right? By saying, like, maybe if I talk to you about it beforehand, you'll build some kind of rapport. You'll look out for it when I submit it. Maybe you'll tell me to send it to you directly.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never done that. But she was pitching me on it. She's like, it's about a tooth fairy, but it's like a cool, punky tooth fairy.
I forgot.
Who likes to do things her own way and like do pranks and stuff. And I'm like, there's no one in this entire room full of hundreds of tables who wants to hear this pitch about your punk tooth fairy, but definitely not me. But there's nothing you can do. You just have to nod and say, oh, yeah, go ahead and submit it. Send it on through. put it in the slush pile where it will die.
Mm-hmm. And then, that is the process.
You nod until they leave.
I will say that there is a space for all of that writing now.
Yes.
And the book fair, as a result, has become completely unmanageable. But it also... It is kind of nice to walk through it now and see, like, not just university presses, not just literary magazines of various levels of tenure, but to see, like, okay, so there's one place called Taco Bell Quarterly, and we don't have to talk about Taco Bell Quarterly, but they were there. And that suggests to you a different style of literary values that might exist here, but beyond that, even like that is its own thing. But there are now like children's book publishers. There's magical, mystical fantasy book publishers. There's environmental publishers. There, like it's a lot more niche, and there are a lot more outlets for people publishing just any given thing. Now, I think they still bring those conversations to every table. Some of them.
Yeah. They're not being discerning or strategic about that. That's why they're in this situation.
Right. But I do think that there is hope that they will have a more receptive audience somewhere that is actually fit for their work, which didn't used to be true. And it made the whole conference a little more snobbish. And I, totally participated in that snobbishness, and people still do. Like, the conversations I overhear at AWP are the most insufferable conversations that anyone can imagine. And one of them was a guy waiting in the line for the keynote speech by John Waters, which was really cool, by the way, and saying, I feel like there are more people in line for this keynote speaker than there are people who actually read books.
Huh.
And it's like,
that's wrong.
Sir, you're wrong.
Yeah. If you believed that, you would need to stop writing.
Yes.
That's not enough people.
And I sort of, the one way I sort of feel for him is like, there are probably people at AWP who do not read especially much, who primarily want to be writers and do not want to participate in any sort of literary community, right?
Certainly, like 10% of the people or something.
Yeah, they think it would be cool to be a writer, and they've heard that this is a conference for those, so they ponied up. But to his point, you do sort of feel when you're walking around AWP like, should I be doing this at all? Like, should I be trying to write? Because this is absurd.
Yeah,
This world cannot hold all of us.
Right. No, I mean, like, there's a certain arrogance that I have cultivated for dealing with this precise problem, right? There's what I remember when I feel that anxiety is like, well, I have read the work of a lot of like, I have a pretty good sample of what the people here are doing, and so I am not threatened by it. Because I am aware of how much we are not, whether we know it or not, how much we are not competing for the same people.
Right.
But the problem is that then there's the little voice in the back of your head that's like, well, but you know that you aren't shit either.
Right. You have to know that, right?
It's very possible that you are just as deluded as the rest of these people, and it becomes more possible with each year that passes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a hard space to be alive in for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I want to come back to the John Waters keynote, but there was a specific thing I was kind of curious to ask you about. And this is partly, I don't know, did you see the stupid Slate? I should maybe not introduce it so derisively, but Slate.
Yeah, you're losing your professional edge.
Slate had an article about how a certain class of readers, maybe mainly women who read romance, only want to read in the first person now. Yes. They only want to read stories and books that are written in the first person, and they're very aggressive about this, and they're very narrow-minded about it.
I did see this stupid article.
Yeah. And the thing that they talked about that I am interested in, and I'm curious with what you're saying about the kind of broadening of the book fair, like everybody blames every change right now that they perceive in writing on fan fiction. And I've definitely been guilty of that, right? Sometimes like I definitely think, there's this thing happening. It reminds me of fan fiction. I bet it comes from the fact that more and more writers are starting in fan fiction and reading fan fiction now versus when we were young. Is that represented in AWP? Did you see panels about fan fiction? Did you see any tables about fan fiction or anything like that?
That is a really good question. I did not explore the book fair super thoroughly, so possibly there was representation there. But I looked through the panels pretty carefully, and I don't think there was anything. I don't think there was a lot on derivative works or fanfic.
Yeah.
Which, is kind of in keeping with the general mindset of the people who attend.
Right. Well, and it's for professionalism, which it's for people who see themselves as being on some level literary professionals. That is theoretically the core audience. And fan fiction is traditionally in tension with that idea. Now, I don't think that really holds anymore. But that was the culture for a long time. So it makes sense. I wasn't expecting there to be a lot, but I was curious if you did encounter it.
People do, it comes up. I feel like I heard people talk about writing it in various contexts or working with writers who do have, a lot of the pedagogy panels, which I did not attend as many of those this year because I'm not doing as much like teaching creative writing, but that it comes up often there that, kind of like how to deal with students writing fan fiction.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't usually come at it from sort of the positive side. And the other thing I'll say is that, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, but the first person idea coming from fanfic is a very weird presumption, and I think they forgot about the other scapegoat in the literary world, YA, which is, I think, where it comes from. Because
that would make a lot more sense. Like Rachel Jane Andelman, who was on our fan fiction focused episode early on, she posted on Blue Sky that she could not remember the last time she read fan fiction in the first person, and I, who had like glossed over that aspect entirely while reading the article, was like, oh yeah, I haven't either. Like, when that's not usually how it works, which makes sense because like fan fiction is traditionally it's like, if nothing else, it's the impulse of like, I would like to see Cloud next to Squall possibly or whatever.
But I want to be Cloud.
No, you might do that, but like mainly you want to see the characters and you want to see
like
them interact.
Dig into their interiority.
They are the object almost more than they are the subject of fan fiction. So just the idea that even could be where it came from in retrospect was like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
So yeah, I would say it probably comes from YA, which is well represented at AWP. Like I said, there's lots of representation of children's book publishers, YA, lit, both in the panels and the book fair.
So let's circle back to John Waters.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that he is the one who I first heard say that if you are on a date with someone and you go back to their place and there is no evidence that they read books, then you should not sleep with them. You need to leave because we need to punish people who are not engaging in the life of the mind. They need to be reading books or they don't deserve to get laid. Did that come up in the presentation?
He did not say that, and I did not know that he might be the source of that quote. But that was very clear from his speech, was that like he considers himself a writer before anything else, and a reader. And he had an early like troubled relationship with books. It took him a while to get around to reading because, as he put it, like school ruins books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't find a book he liked until middle school, and then he found a horny one. And then, you know, he was like, he got in trouble for reading it. So his argument was sort of like, if a sixth grader picks up a book, I don't care what it is, let him read it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. If they can like a book, then let them do it. And I think that that idea was definitely threaded through his speech, that he just thinks it's really important to be a reader, to, you know, to have writers.
Did he leave you with a call to action? Did you feel as you left the venue that you knew what your life was for briefly?
He did definitely. I mean, he made a lot of pronouncements. But there were so many of them. Like, honestly, the structure of his speech, and this is not meant to be to his detriment, but it will sound that way. It was a lot like a Andy Rooney? Is that the guy on 60 Minutes?
Mickey Rooney's the actor. Andy Rooney. I mean, is he alive? Yes, Andy Rooney, who died November 4, 2011. He was born January 4th, 1919. And so I think we are genuinely getting to the point where people are not going to get this reference anymore.
Yeah.
That we had this old guy whose thing was he complained about the world being confusing on 60 Minutes.
He got like a 2-minute slot, maybe less, maybe 1 minute on 60 Minutes to complain about the world being annoying and confusing. And it was like between a Jerry Seinfeld-esque observational stand-up, you know, minute.
Yeah, it was half that.
Have you ever noticed how small the airplane meals are? What am I, a mouse?
But then he was baffled by it. He wasn't just annoyed by it. He was like, "What's happening?
Yeah.
Where am I?"
Yeah. So it definitely kind of took that form. That was sort of the structure that was like, why are we banning books? But the upshot of it was always either filthy, absolutely filthy.
Nice.
Extremely filthy man. It was it was pretty delightful. I was sitting next to like a very well-to-do lady who clearly did like John Waters, or she wouldn't have been there. But
did she clutch pearls at any point?
Not quite, but she looked like she was dressed for an opera. She may have been wearing a fur coat. I can't remember. I had the distinct impression, like, ma'am, you are going to the theater.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But she did, she still had a good time, but I do think she was scandalized by some of the jokes. Mm-hmm. I am not a pre-existing fan of John Waters. I keep meaning to watch Hairspray because I think I just would like having had seen it.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not realize what an explicit trans ally he is. I always knew from The Simpsons, of course, that he was an outspoken advocate for gays and lesbians, but I just kind of assumed he didn't, like many people of his age or whatever, he didn't sort of recognize transness in the same ways. And I think that is true to an extent. Like, I think a lot of his advocacy is sort of based in drag. But I do, he was very humane. He had a lot of really good things to say. So yeah, those were the pronouncements. Was basically like, why can't we all just enjoy being filthy humans together? And and I do think that my takeaway from it was honestly sort of like, maybe we could stand in our own advocacy to be a little less demanding of ourselves, to have the perfect ideas or the perfect expression of them. Mm-hmm. Because he definitely said some things that were like, man, that's not really how you say it anymore.
Yeah.
Or like he brought up Woody Allen at one point. It was kind of like, don't bring up Woody Allen.
Yeah, you don't want to bite that off unless you're ready to chew on it for a while.
Right. But it just, he just blew past it and it didn't matter. And it kind of felt like, yeah, we can still talk to each other. So yeah, that was my feeling afterward, was like, I don't know, maybe we don't have to be quite as careful, and that will actually result in some better forms of expression.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is anything.
Woke too is the hot topic.
Yeah.
And I always feel a little resentful because I think that people are a little fast and loose with their criticisms of Woke 1. I think Woke 1 was fundamentally correct and has been proven correct by the events that followed Woke 1 and its violent murder. But I am nonetheless looking forward to Woke 2, and I do think that there is something to... I mean, I think that to slightly tangent and express opinions you didn't ask for, my feeling about this is that there are annoying people in every walk of life. Some of the annoying people were quite vocal about Woke 1. They were doing their best. They were maybe, showing off a little bit in a way that could be a little annoying sometimes with like how correct their ideas and phrasings were. But I think that it's a lot more annoying to be a jerk.
Yeah.
And to not try to be nice to other people. And like fundamentally, I really think that people should remember that as one effort to, for the first time in a lot of people's lives, treat other people with like any kind of respect and decency.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't happen to like quite get their whole scene.
Right. You wouldn't have to think of it as being policed, right?
Yeah, exactly. You could take it as useful instruction.
Yeah, that's kind of a choice you're making instead of letting it sort of give you examples of the kinds of things you might look for when you're just engaging with others. So yes, the keynote was good. I have never gone to a keynote at AWP before because usually I don't get a lot out of speeches.
I'm actively hostile to them. I never go to a speech.
I don't like to hear how important writing is because I don't in some ways think that it is important. That's I'm surprised I said that. Because I do think reading is important, and obviously it's valuable for people to write to make that happen. But I don't know.
I don't think it's easy to write well while thinking about how important the act of writing is.
Yes.
I think it's easy to read well that way. I do not think it is easy to write well that way.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, what have you been reading?
Well, thank you, honey. I've been reading a lot of things, but the one that I thought I would talk about today it's called The Score by, I'm gonna say his name bad, and it's because of several. I say every name bad of every writer that I talk about here for one thing.
It's fine. It can just be a global disclaimer.
Right. The name is C, as in the letter C with a period after it. Thi is the middle name, Thi, and then the last name is Nguyen, which is by far the easiest part to do there. Because like what I want to say is C, Thi, Nguyen, but I feel like if I say that without explaining to you like the different parts of speech that are involved, right? That one of these is a letter.
I would have not pictured it correctly. That is for sure.
But it's called The Score. It's by he's an academic. He's a philosopher. I believe he's published several other books, and I'm not quite sure like what his reputation is, like what the odds are that a listener will have read him before. But he has an intense focus on game theory, at least in his recent career. He's really interested in the idea of play and what it means and how it works. And the book is focused specifically on the idea of scoring systems and metrics and how they control our lives. So a concept that he introduces pretty early on is the idea of value capture. The idea is that value capture is what happens to you when you let performing according to a metric become more important to you than having the actual, like doing the actual thing that the metric is supposed to measure. The easy, maybe kind of dumb example that people will have experienced most directly is like you get onto social media, you have fun just making some posts, you're just doing your thing, and then you get a little taste of people faving, retweeting, replying, and you start engaging with that game, and your goal becomes, how can I post in a way that will generate the most numbers, because that is what my score is in this game. I know that I'm successful if I have a high score, if I have a high number of likes. And so you start optimizing toward that. And you see people genuinely lose their fucking minds to this dynamic in particular.
When their original goal was actually probably to, have a good idea or connect with people or
talk
something.
To friends, be funny. Yeah, and then they end up like, I feel like the first Trump administration did give you the wildest examples of this, where like people that I legitimately sort of knew went in as like funny writers and came out as experts on Russia.
Yes.
Like the guy who did he just tweeted it out tweet. I knew I had interactions with him before that tweet. He was not traditionally known as a man investigating Russia. That wasn't his job before then. But the metrics kind of nudged him in that direction. And like, no disrespect, man. I think he was, more earnest than a lot of these people. But like, that's one really egregious example. But there's examples all over the place, right? Like he works in education, so a lot of his examples hit really close to home for me, where he talks about how he works in the philosophy department, and yet he needs to find a way to translate everything that he does into retention numbers. He needs to find a way to prove that the students, as a result of being in the philosophy program, are successfully completing their degrees and moving on to lucrative careers, which is like a fine thing for a school to want to do, but does not really give you much guidance about how to do the work of philosophy, right? So that's kind of the overall concept of the book, is just talking about the way that because scoring systems are so powerful, they can really distort your behavior in wild ways. But they're also powerful in a way that like you need them to do a lot of the things that we do, right? Like one of the things that he talks about a lot is that in order to make things measurable consistently, in order to make it so we can agree on like the value of different objects in the world, we have to standardize them.
Right.
And so he talks about this thing that I've been like quietly obsessed with for years and years, which is like the reason that the screws in your life work and they match up with the other screws, and like you could often take a screw from one thing and use it in an entirely different piece of furniture or whatever, manufactured under totally different circumstances in a different country by different people. Like there could be nothing else in common, but because we've worked so hard to standardize so many things, you can do that. And like a lot of things work that way. A lot of things that you don't think about necessarily, we have sort of a best practice that we've converged on in this way.
Well, one important and powerful example is in our basement next to the laundry machine, where I did a little newsletter style write-up of the I remember that the acronym is ISO, International Standard of something, probably. But it's the laundry symbols. There is a group of people who came up with and regularly reviews the laundry care symbols that tell you whether you can wash something, whether you can wash something in a washer, whether you can dry it in the dryer with heat and how much heat, whether you can iron something. All of those are set by like an international committee that reviews and sort of re-evaluates its work on a regular schedule. So I believe the next time they're meeting is 2028, and I'm very excited to see, are we going to have any new symbols come out, any new standards of care?
You'll have to be our correspondent for that as well. I'm excited to hear what you find. So like that is interesting and useful, and he's been working up to the point where he's going to explain. He hasn't gotten there. I've gotten a little frustrated for a reason I'll get to, but he is the basic dynamic at the beginning of the book is these scoring systems have all these really nasty unintended consequences. They can really like take over your life, but they can also be really useful. But they are rough. And meanwhile, when you like play a game, scoring systems are really empowering, right? You don't feel restricted by the scoring system in a game. You feel enabled to take action that is meaningful, to make decisions, to try things out. You feel liberated to experiment. And so the question that the book is apparently going to answer at some point pretty soon is like, why? How do we reconcile those two things? We know that we can't just be playful and treat that as a solution to all life's problems, right? We can't pretend that real scoring systems are like the scoring systems in games, because the consequences are dire in real life, depending on your scoring system. We haven't gotten there yet. And the thing that is a little frustrating for me is that I think I just know a lot of the same stuff he does and agree with him about everything and think about everything the way that he does, more or less. So like every chapter he starts laying out an example and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad you got to that. There was a moment where in a recent chapter where I was like, when is he going to bring up seeing like a state? He's talking, the way that he's talking is exactly like the ideas that are central to seeing like a state, which we talked about in a previous episode of this podcast.
Yes.
When is he gonna bring it up? And then he finally did. And I was like, oh, thank God. But like the whole book has been like that for me a little bit, where it's like, I know that what's happening is that not everyone in the world thinks like you and me, Mr. Nguyen. And so like you have to walk them through it and explain why this thing about board games is relevant. Yeah. But I'm already there. I've already been thinking about that exact thing. So it's like a relief to see someone else thinking about it in the same way that I do. But I also, sometimes it's a little slow.
Yeah, sometimes you get a little frustrated. Impatient for it. Yeah.
Move along.
No, that seems like an interesting reading experience in some ways, though. It's been a while since I read anything that I like resonated with in that way. Yeah. Where it was just kind of like, oh, nice. Yeah, I've been thinking about this too. Even in my Godzilla research, which I will find a way to shoehorn into every one of my appearances.
You must. You're the Godzilla correspondent. That's your job.
Oh, okay. I'll switch dutifully to my Godzilla correspondent hat. Perhaps we'll switch back to AWP correspondent later.
Yeah.
But you would think that I would find some like-minded individuals in my Godzilla research, and I haven't quite yet.
Yeah.
And that's interesting in its own right, of course. Like just kind of seeing how different people approach the great question that is being a fan of Godzilla. But, I would like to sort of recognize the mindset or something, I would like to feel a kinship.
Yeah.
A little more deep on the level of like thinking, just feeling like I share a brain with somebody else, which, feels dumb to say. I'm not saying like I'm thinking about it more deeply than they are. I'm just saying like, how come I can't find the person who's coming at it from quite the same angle? Feels like I shouldn't be alone in this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I always get suspicious of myself when I start to feel this way. There's in the another book I'm reading that I've read into this podcast a couple episodes ago, the New Life. It's about this guy who has discovered a new book that is going to change everything about his life. And the first like 30 pages are just discussing like his experience of that and the feeling like, oh man, everything is going to be different. And it quietly makes fun of the character in a number of ways. And one of the big ones is that he's like, everything in this book I've thought. This book is telling me what I already knew. And like that is often how it feels to read a thing. And then like it's usually an illusion, right? Like usually it's like, no, you're agreeing with it now. You're thinking it now because you're reading it now.
You got the information and then you thought the information back at yourself, which made it feel like you already knew it, which is an experience I often have, I feel like, with music. Yeah. Like I'll listen to a song for the first time and I'll be like, I think I've heard this. And
yeah.
No, you are hearing it right now.
Yes. But you can do the math, right? Like that's one of the weird, mysterious things about how music works, especially like simple pop music. You hear the first part and you're like, I know everything about how this is going to work. I couldn't tell you in words necessarily, but I know.
Yeah, if you successfully exercise even a slight bit of prediction and then that prediction comes true, it feels like you already knew it.
Right.
Which,
exactly.
I guess in a sense you did, but
in a sense.
No, that's cool. That sounds fun. I get the impatience as well, but that sounds like a fun experience, and to just have some more words, I guess, to articulate your thoughts with.
It is a really useful idea. It is, and the other big idea that I do want to mention, because I think it is useful, but it's also an example of like he's explained it several times, and I'm like, this is how I live my life, man. He talks about the difference between playing for the scoring system and what he calls striving play. And striving play, his example is like rock climbing. He used to try to do the most impressive, most difficult, highest ranked climbs. And then there came a point where he was like, no, actually what I want to do is climb in a way that feels good and challenging and interesting to me. And I just want to pay attention and work at the climbing. And like, that is what I would describe as like the only decent way to live life. Like I don't want to do anything that is entirely about the scoring system. I would really prefer to do things that are about having an experience that is rich and satisfying and like do what feels like doing good work. But it is useful to have that name as striving play. It's useful to have the various examples he provides that make you realize that you're doing it too, because everybody's doing it.
Right.
And to think about when you're doing it and why.
Yeah, that makes me think, not to draw too parallel a line back to AWP, but I do feel like that's how I play AWP. Like I go into AWP every time I go with a sort of mindset of play, and I don't think everyone does, and that's fine.
Yeah, I don't even do a good job of that.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying I do it better than other people by any means.
You do it better than me.
I go into it with like, what would be most rewarding for me to get out of this experience? And I sort of try to optimize my experience toward that. Whereas I think a lot of people are more looking for like, what would be most relevant to me? Instead, for me, it's more like what would enrich me? What would sort of level me up in some areas that I feel less confident in even. My book buying coming out of AWP is always wildly aspirational.
Yeah, I never would be able to predict it.
No, same. I got like a literary magazine that was well designed. I got a new book that is about race that I would like, race and politics, that looks really interesting and is probably like kind of polemical that I wouldn't normally read. I got a book of poetry. Who even am I?
Imagine being a guy who reads poetry.
A guy who buys poetry.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of go with the muse a little bit and just sort of ask myself what sparks something.
Yeah.
I went to a panel on how to like creative writing instruction for elders. Which is not, I'm not teaching elders how to write. I'm not implementing a nursing home community writing program, but I just had the thought, like, I think I would maybe get a lot out of this because I do work with some students in my work that are coming to the program at an advanced age. Like, they're coming back to school after a long time away. They had very different schooling experiences. And I was like, I feel like this panel about writing in nursing homes will give me some insight for how to better serve these students. But everybody I told about it was like, I wouldn't have ever gone to that.
No, I'm with you. I immediately have questions. I want to know what is the, I have guesses about like what is the core appeal of creative writing instruction for folks who are older. My guess would be that it's a rich way of engaging with memories and experiences and things that you have wanted to say for a long time, but you maybe haven't known how. That's like my first thought. What kind of stuff did they talk about?
I mean, I think that is it. To a large part, it's almost like encouraging elders to read. It's a really robust way of working with your mind. To ask it to write.
Yeah.
And to ask people to do the things that you do when you write well, to imitate or to observe.
Yeah.
Or to describe. Or
imagine an audience.
Imagine.
Implicit in all of that stuff.
Yeah. It doesn't even matter like what you're communicating so much, although they talked about using it as a form of memory care in patients with, or in elderly people with dementia. It was more about just the act of it, just how healthy in some ways the act of it can be at an advanced age. And and I should mention too, especially most important, I think, was that it was a way of connecting with other people, because it was a way for them to express themselves. It was a way for them to respond to each other in ways that like other nursing home activities often don't encourage them to do as much, if they watch a movie together, that's great. Hopefully they all laugh at the same moments, or, they, maybe they can talk about it afterward, but it's more of a passive experience than saying, hey, your neighbor's going to read their poem aloud now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need to respond to it in some way.
Yeah. You got to be there for it. You got to at least try to be paying attention in a sustained way. Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like this is something, it's just like on some level, it's just a natural part of getting older, right? Like I'm not turning these corners so much myself, but like I know people who are, like we recently bought my mom hearing aids, and like it has felt really urgent to me in a way to like encourage people to start thinking about this stuff a little bit earlier, because when you look at like what it does to people's quality of life when they stop interacting with other people, when they stop having complicated stimuli, when they stop like just getting out there and experiencing things, you starve yourself so dramatically. Like you die. Like you just lose years of your life. And like part of the reason that I think I feel strongly about that is I just feel like, if that can happen to you when you're 50, 60, 70, are you like, it can happen to you a little bit now. Like if you're not giving yourself those opportunities, if you're not like engaging with things in a rich way, you can starve yourself at 40.
Yeah.
That feels very possible to me. And it feels like something that I wish, I mean, people feel so consistently overwhelmed. I think they would be confused to hear that they might not be getting enough stimulus. But I mean, so much of it is so nothing, right? Like so much of it is stuff that you're going to forget immediately. And like, even as you're experiencing it, that it has no value for you. Like this is why I want everybody to get off TikTok. By the way, the weather is really going nuts, and I've been confident that it wasn't on the mic, and now I am no longer confident of that. So I feel that I have to acknowledge it. I think we've got
I have no
thunder
idea.
and hail.
Yeah. I mean, I knew it was going to pop off here soon.
Yeah.
I don't see it in the waveforms on my end, but yeah, we'll see. It's pretty loud.
Yeah, it became implausible that we weren't getting any of it at a certain point.
The light fixture was shaking a little bit just a second ago. Oh, okay. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think that was what I ended up taking from it for myself. I went in thinking like, like I said, it might be useful for my work with some of my students. And I also thought it might be useful for me in talking with my parents. I've tried recently, especially to sort of ask them to go into more depth, to go into more detail about some of their past and just like tell me their stories a little bit. And they've been reluctant, in large part, especially my mother. And part of her reluctance seems to be based in like, she's kind of convinced that, I think she is convinced that there's not a lot to say. And that's not the point.
Right.
Right. But it's hard to explain that to somebody. And that's not even how I thought of it until thinking now about this panel, because I think I struggle with that impulse as well.
Yeah.
Especially in my writing. I'm like, what's even the point of writing this? Who cares how I felt? Who cares what I experienced? It doesn't really rate. It's not really unusual. All of those things are like perfectly normal things to think. And I think that panel in part made me think like, no, the exercise of it is actually just really important. Like continuing to find ways, continuing to do the hard work of finding a way to express yourself.
Yeah.
And make your thoughts make sense to somebody else.
Yeah.
It can feel very worthless and it can feel not worth the effort, but I think it's one of the things that we have to do to keep ourselves alive.
Yeah.
And yeah, you definitely see people in their 30s and 40s starting to do that checking out.
Yeah.
Right? Just there are other priorities, there are other obligations, and it feels like, my experiences don't, or my feelings or my thoughts don't really bear repeating. And maybe, you feel like you don't have somebody who will listen to them, but I think you gotta find a way.
Yeah.
And that is my keynote speech.
Oh.
AWP.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may speak a little bit about a book I was reading.
Please do.
In conjunction with this. On a friend's recommendation, I am reading for the first time. I'm given to understand this is kind of a classic, but I've rarely read anything anyone else has read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody's like, well, of course you've read Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem.
Yeah. No, I never have.
And I'm like, nope, I haven't read any Joan Didion.
Nabokov, Pale Fire, right? Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
But I've really been enjoying it. The things that I had sort of passively absorbed about Joan Didion made me think that I probably wouldn't get a lot out of it. In my head, she was kind of a figure of the counterculture and like the 60s and 70s and was, a feminist. And I thought that her writing would be familiar to me in that way, that it would sort of feel like, that's been sort of regurgitated now. But I found it's not, the writing isn't 100% to my taste in some ways, but I am learning a lot from the way she structures a short essay. And she's more journalistic in her approach than I would have expected. And I even, honey, I highlighted some quotes.
Whoa.
In my reading app.
That is not done by us. We are not highlighters. I do leave that feature on like if I'm reading like a Kindle book or whatever, and it's like, it'll highlight these are the words that people most often highlight. This is a sentence.
Right.
And like every time I see it, part of me says you should turn this off, because it does feel like some moron has come in and underlined what is obviously the most important sentence in the whole thing. They're like, the meaning of the situation was love. And then they'll underline that. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help. But I do still, I leave it on because I am interested in that moron's reading experience.
Yeah. No, that's how I feel when I buy like a used book and there's some notes in the margin.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw recently, I can't remember where I saw it, but it might have been you even, a tweet or a skeet on Blue Sky that was somebody's used copy of Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And somebody had highlighted the first line, "Call me Ishmael," and had written out to the side his name.
Yeah. Yes. I can't give that up. That's too beautiful. I hate it, and I like the idea of thinking that way is infuriating to me, but also it's beautiful.
Because they're like, I have to hope they're not the most uncharitable reading is that they're preparing for a quiz.
Yeah. They're nervous they're going to forget that.
Yeah. But even that is kind of beautiful, right? Because it's like, oh God, somebody taught you to read this way.
Yeah.
You know, and they said, you gotta keep an eye on these details.
Right. No, I mean, I feel like that is a huge part of what I learned from those in like physical books and digital books is here is what people have been taught to extract things, right? Like you're taught in school, I think, and like certainly as an undergrad that like your job is to get in there and decode the most important stuff and take it out with you. And so people do that. They go in there and they're like, I have to make sure that I get all the important facts and ideas and bring them with. And so I have to be able to talk about how his name is Ishmael. That's an important element in this.
Yeah. If I don't want to look a fool.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like, I don't know the names of the characters in my own books.
Yeah. So yeah, I have been surprising myself with how much I'm enjoying it. I feel like there's a lot to learn from it. I really like, there's some spareness to the style that is refreshing, and also a level of detail that also feels bygone to me in a way. It's reportage, more than I thought it would be. And I thought I would read the highlighted portions.
Please do.
That you could. So, this is from the essay entitled 7,000 Romaine, Los Angeles 38. And that is the address of Howard Hughes. Eccentric millionaire, maybe billionaire.
Thank you for intuiting that I didn't quite remember who Howard Hughes was.
I don't know a lot about him, even from this essay, but I gather that he was an eccentric, an eccentric rich man who owned a lot of real estate and other things, and sort of enforced his wishes on a populace as a result. Like, people kind of had to care about who he was and what he thought because he was rich.
Right.
So I highlighted some sections. This won't be too long, but let me know what you think.
Yeah.
By July of 1967, Howard Hughes is the largest single landholder in Clark County, Nevada. Howard likes Las Vegas, an acquaintance of Hughes once explained, because he likes to be able to find a restaurant open in case he wants a sandwich. Why do we like these stories so? Why do we tell them over and over? Why have we made a folk hero out of a man who is the antithesis of all our official heroes, a haunted millionaire out of the West, trailing a legend of desperation and power and white sneakers? But then we have always done that. Our favorite people and our favorite stories become so, not by any inherent virtue, but because they illustrate something deep in the grain, something unadmitted. ... That we have made a hero of Howard Hughes tells us something interesting about ourselves, something only dimly remembered, tells us that the secret point of money and power in America is neither the things that money can buy, nor power for power's sake. Americans are uneasy with their possessions, guilty about power, all of which is difficult for Europeans to perceive because they are themselves so truly materialistic, so versed in the uses of power. But absolute personal freedom, mobility, privacy. And a little later, a long time ago, Lionel Trilling pointed out what he called the fatal separation between the ideas of our educated liberal class and the deep places of the imagination. I mean only, he wrote, that our educated class has a ready, if mild, suspiciousness of the profit motive, a belief in progress, science, social legislation, planning, and international cooperation. Those beliefs do great credit to those who hold them. Yet it is a comment, if not on our beliefs, then on our way of holding them, that not a single first-rate writer has emerged to deal with these ideas and the emotions that are consonant with them in a great literary way. Officially, we admire men who exemplify those ideas. We admire the Adlai Stevenson character, the rational man, the enlightened man, the man not dependent upon the potentially psychopathic mode of action. Among rich men, we officially admire Paul Mellon, a socially responsible inheritor in the European mold. There has always been that divergence between our official and our unofficial heroes. It is impossible to think of Howard Hughes without seeing the apparently bottomless gulf between what we say we want and what we do want, between what we officially admire and secretly desire, between, in the largest sense, the people we marry and the people we love. In a nation which increasingly appears to prize social virtues, Howard Hughes remains not merely antisocial, but grandly, brilliantly, surpassingly asocial. He is the last private man, the dream we no longer admit.
Huh.
And somewhere in there, she comes back to the idea of just like the ultimate freedom being the idea that you could own enough places, you could have sway over enough places and people and goods that you can just get a sandwich anytime you want. Like that is the highest desire. So that spoke to me because I don't know why.
Yeah, well, so I had questions about it. Not that I want to hold you accountable, like you read this, so now you have to answer my riddles. I was curious how you feel the time between then and now in that description, because there were things about it that felt to me like you could say them equally today, and then there were other things in there that I felt like, I don't know, you could say those things, but I don't know that you would say them with much confidence. Like the idea that we admire the international, the virtuous, sophisticated man and stuff. Like, I feel like, have we become more honest about some of the stuff that, or at least by this formulation?
I think,
are we comfortable with things that we weren't comfortable with then?
I think we may... if I were to take the terms of her argument, I think that any remaining sort of influence of the Europeanness that she's talking about has faded, right? Like any remaining idea
that's
that like
true.
Power is about sort of benign guidance of a people, or that it's
No, noblesse oblige.
Yes.
Is dead.
Yes. And I think that when she's writing, there is still kind of that idea of the philanthropist, the guy who takes care of the estate.
Right. Yeah, because like the big defense of Nixon that I think is basically true. It's not even usually offered as a defense, just like as a complication. It was like, he did feel responsible to run the country.
Right.
Was he good at it? Did he do the right things? Did he have good ideas? No. But like he did feel on some level that he needed to be a steward of the country, its resources, and its people. And that is like the main thing missing now from the horrors in charge, is like there's no longer that sense that they are accountable to anyone or responsible for taking care of anyone.
Yeah. But for me, the resonance was especially in the idea of, on one hand, desperately wanting to lift up social virtue, to say that our highest occupation is to like help others and pursue liberty for all. The actual dream is to kind of be entirely asocial. To like be beholden to nobody, to be responsible to nobody, to need nobody, and to still be able to get exactly what you want when you want it.
Right.
It ended up to me feeling like a really good expression of both why people would be drawn to that and why some of the ways we talk about fighting it are wrong-headed, because we've talked about this a little bit before too, I think, like the idea that Trump is just like, that he has any conception of what the public in a general sense thinks and wants and is reacting in any way to that is daily demonstrated to be false. Like there is no long game. There is no distraction. This is not a circus for him. He is always and forever pushing to have to answer to nothing and nobody.
Yeah. This is just what his body produces. This is what he does biologically.
Yeah. And I hadn't seen that articulated quite so well, that there is something we want and admire in the asocialness of it all. And I thought of it, in the context of my perhaps outsized reaction to my bad travel situation, which I said we wouldn't talk about, but putting back on my AWP correspondence hat.
Yeah.
Air travel was terrible.
Yeah.
I reached the point where I was like, I cannot be in the airport for any longer.